Today, I would like to discuss Afro Colombian struggles with and resistance against threats of displacement due to neoliberalist land grabbing in their communities. Afro Colombians are Colombians who have African heritage. Data on Afro Colombians and Afro descendants in Latin America in general can be hard to obtain. However, quote, the official government estimates are that Afro Colombians make up 10.6% of Colombia's total population. These official state figures are much lower than the UN's estimate that roughly 25% of the population is Afro-descendant, and contradict earlier Colombia National Department of Planning estimates that between 19 and 26% of the population were Afro-descendants. Bratsby's 299. So, despite the range of estimates, it is undeniable that Afro-Colombians account for a significant proportion of the overall Colombian population. Afro-Colombians' African heritage dates back over 500 years ago to the transatlantic slave trade and the rise of colonialism in the Americas, in which their ancestors were held captive, brought to the continent, and enslaved by Spanish colonizers. Unfortunately, although slavery in Colombia was abolished in 1851, Afro-Colombians continue to face discrimination and violence. As described by Afro-Latina scholar Marilyn Machado Mosquera, from the time when the violent kidnapping of our ancestors to bring us to this continent, the whip of the enslaver, changing forms, intends to continue to strike us. Mosquera 3. Many Afro-Colombians celebrate, acknowledge, and identify with their African heritage. Afro-Colombian women are suffering violence and displacement due to land grabbing based on gold extractivism. Land grabbing is when, quote, public and private investors target what they characterize as unexploited and underexploited lands in developing countries for large-scale land acquisitions. Bratsby's 295. Extractivism is, quote, the intensive and extensive exploitation of resources with export as the principal destination. Rio Franco's. To, quote, expand commercial holdings and mining operations, end quote, multinational corporations are taking Afro-Colombians' territories to extract natural resources, primarily gold, for economic gain. Blanchard 834. Though the neoliberalism-fueled ideology thought was that the answer to Afro-Colombians' area's economic distress was, quote, development by these foreign actors, that is not the case. This, quote, development led to, quote, desolation, hunger, and death, end quote, along with outrageous poverty for these communities, Mosquera 4, not to mention the environmental destruction that it caused. Artisanal mining done by Afro-Colombian communities is more than just an economic practice and a way to obtain a commodity for economic growth. Mosquera 7. It is a cultural practice and a way of life. There are two kinds of illegal mining that take place. First is entirely unpermitted illegal mining. Second, there is licensed mining that is, quote, based on government permits issued in violation of Afro-Colombian rights. Bratsby's 312. It is sometimes referred to as legal mining, which is a misnomer. It is flatly illegal under Colombian constitutional law. In Article 330 of the Colombian Constitution, it is made clear that prior consultation must be acquired to use the natural resources in those territories. Bratsby's 305. This issue intersects to create a compounded oppression for Afro-Colombian women as they struggle with being Black, a woman, and a rural worker. These displacements have a disproportionate impact on Afro-Colombian women, with sexual violence and displacement being correlated. They are in the unfortunate position of being oppressed by both the patriarchy and the deep-rooted racism of white supremacy. Mosquera 5. Many community councils have been utilized to combat this issue in regions such as Latoma. They use these councils to mobilize and spread awareness. For example, Francia Marquez, an Afro-Colombian woman who is a part of Latoma's community council, advocated for her region of Cauca and was a vanguard for land rights for her people. Due to the continuation of illegal mining despite legislation making it unlawful, Marquez led 80 women on a 10-day march from Cauca to Bogota. They protested for 24 days total. Bratsby's 315. There is a social movement in these regions of Afro Colombian communities to resist the state sanctioned antagonism and land grabbing by multinational corporations, and Afro Colombian women are the leaders of this movement. Leaders in this movement are in constant danger in the form of, quote, harassment, arrest, and assassination, Bratsby's 307. Land rights activist Sarah Quinones from the community of Tumaco faced, quote, threats, harassment, and intimidation based on her activism. After 2 other community leaders were killed, she had to flee her community. These land rights activists form solidarity with other groups that fight for Afro-descendant rights and gender equality. For example, in February 2019, members of PNC, quote, an Afro-descendant collective of more than 100 grassroots organizations, community councils, and individuals formed in Colombia in 1993, end quote, participated in joint workshops at the City University of New York's Human Rights and Gender Justice Clinic in Cali and Cauca in Colombia, Bratsby's 290. As aforementioned, Francia Marquez led a campaign against the illegal mining in La Toma. After filing a tutela, or a petition to the Colombian Constitutional Court, which argued that, quote, the government had illegally permitted mining in Afro-Colombian territory without their free, prior informed consent, end quote, the court ruled in her favor, Bratsby's 315. However, the illegal mining continued despite this. That is when Marquez led her march to raise awareness. After the 24 days of protest, the court again agreed to take action to combat this issue. They, quote, recognized an obligation to consult citizens with regard to mining projects and allowed subnational entities to use Article 105 popular consultations to weigh in on development planning. Bratsby's 316. This became a powerful tool for advocates. Frustratingly, in fall 2018, the Constitutional Court decided to reverse this decision, stating that, quote, popular consultations could not be used to block mining projects, Bratsby's 316. That is not to say that their efforts have meant nothing. Going up against powerful multinational corporations and government and their strong governments is inherently going to be an uphill battle. They have, through campaigns such as Marquez's March, raised awareness of these issues within their own country. In 2022, Marquez even became Colombia's first Black vice president. They have restructured the society in and around them by creating awareness domestically and internationally, and by having one of their advocates become Colombia's first Black vice president, altering the Colombian political landscape in an unprecedented manner. Thank you.